We are back. We have Gemma Laurence here. The new album is Lavender, and the song you just heard is called Rear View. So you talked about how uh in the previous segment how all of this is a looking back experience. Um then at the end of the album, I feel like we sort of catch up to the present, at least in terms of the present as to when you were writing. Um, how did you learn to sort of uh to use a phrase from the song, dance with yourself in the absence of a relationship in the loneliness and isolation of the pandemic?
Hmm. It's funny thinking about that song because I it was actually the first song that I wrote amongst the whole collection of songs. There's 8 on the album, and I actually wrote it like right before the pandemic. So I wrote it in November of 2019, and I was planning to put it out as a single, and then I ended up not, and then kind of waiting, and then the pandemic happened, and then I wrote all these other songs, and I still had this other song, Rear View, which I'd recorded before, and it was a folk song with mandolin, and it was a little bit more kind of sparkly and bright and folky, a bit more in the style of my previous songs. And then when I was trying to figure out the way to wrap up this album, I was thinking about the eighth song, what the eighth song would be. I was like, Rear View. I already written that like years before. It felt very full circle to come back to that song and realize that the place I was in where I wrote that song was actually quite similar to the place I was in like 2 years later when I was putting out this album. And it just felt like such a beautiful finale or closure to the album. Um, it's really hard being alone, and I'm sure we all felt that, and especially in isolation. And you know, I think it took me a long time to be by myself, to really kind of know how to be by myself and not feel like I was incomplete without another person. And I felt like I spent a lot of my younger years kind of chasing after relationships, chasing after love, being pretty anxious if I didn't have that. And then I got to a point a couple years ago when I was writing this album that I was like, I don't need that at all. Like, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. And I have enough, with my friends and my family. I have enough love in my life that I don't need like a romantic partner to complete me or to complete my life. Sure, it's nice, but I felt really, really secure and really, really happy. And so when we re-recorded the song, I felt this kind of triumphantness recording it, and I just felt so excited to finally be getting back to New York, to finally feel ready to just embark on this mission and have this album about to come out. And yeah, like there's a line like New York is calling me louder than you'll ever call me, and it really felt like in that moment when I was writing that song that there was just bigger things than romance. And it's kind of a funny note to end on too because the album is so romantic. There's so many different vignettes of love and intimacy and tenderness, but they're not all for a romantic partner. And some of them are kind of love songs to other people. Some of them's a love song. There's Lavender, which is a love song to my best friend. There are love songs to people that I used to love, and this one was a love song to myself, and that felt like a really meaningful way to close out the album.
Yeah, does self-love come naturally for you?
I think it's been, it's an uphill battle. And I've gotten to a point where I definitely feel a lot of self-love every day and I wake up and I'm happy with who I am, but it's really hard to look at yourself and every single thing that makes you you and really be like I'm comfortable with all of that. And I think it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of relationships and friendships and the ebbs and flows of life to really get to a point where you're happy with who you are. Um, and I do feel like I'm there now, but it's really hard to get there when you're a teenager, and maybe you're coming out, or maybe like you're just getting out of a relationship, or there's so many massive transitions in life. um, and with the media how it is, and like there's so much like pressure to be a certain way, and you're seeing all these like images of perfect looking people or like perfect appearing lives, and you just need to remind yourself that you're on your own path. And I know it sounds a little cliched, but you're on your own path, and you are beautiful who you are, and you don't need to change. And uh, yeah, it took me a kind of a long time to realize that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Rear View was written before everything. It really did feel like, it was the capstone to a story that began with you saying, I dream that you still think of me sometimes,
Yeah.
and coming to a point where it's I've got my own mission now.
Hmm. Yeah, it is kind of interesting how the songs, I wanted to make them feel kind of timeless in their specificity. Like each of them paint this very specific moment in my life or a moment in anybody's life, um, where, yeah, they just take you to different spots. Like Morningside Heights is looking back on a relationship and finally coming to peace with it. The person that that song is about is also the person that the first song on my first album is about, which is called Judas. And that's like a really angry song about being betrayed. And this was kind of a full circle moment as well, because I was thinking, like, wow, I've come to peace with this. Like, I wonder if this person still thinks of me. I wonder how they view this relationship. And it was a little bit of yearning, but mainly it just kind of felt like, huh, I've come to term with this. I feel good about this now. I can look at it for what it is, which was a beautiful moment, a beautiful short lived relationship. And that's what it was. And it didn't work out. And I think that sentiment comes up in a lot of different songs too. It's like they're all about different people, and but the sentiment kind of remains the same. Maybe you're yearning for somebody, maybe you're yearning for a future person, but at the end of the day, like it's gonna be messy, and it's gonna be unexpected how that person comes in and out of your life. And the album is kind of embracing that messiness and reveling in the beauty of the tender moments, even though they may be few and far between.
Well, I like to end all my interviews by having the artist pick a song. Only rules are you have to go on my prompt and you cannot pick one that you were associated with creating.
Hmm.
Um, and for you, let's go with one of those tender moments.
Hmm. So a song that has inspired me about kind of a tender moment.
No, just a song that captures a tender moment.
I think my favorite songwriter, this is maybe cheating because I'm talking about a songwriter, but I will get to a specific song that captures tenderness so beautifully, is Adrienne Lenker. I love her. She's amazing. She was a huge inspiration to me writing in my songwriting process. And my number one song on Spotify for like 3 years in a row, I think, was Angels by Adrienne Lenker. Um, it's also kind of a bittersweet song. I think there's a line that goes, I don't really like you. I just want to kiss you. Don't know how to love you, but some days I miss you. And I was like, oh God, who could write that? That's so good. That's just like it hits the nail on the head of kind of the push and pull, um, of yearning and intimacy and longing and kind of figuring out how to love somebody in the way that they need to be loved and looking back on a relationship. And it's kind of unclear what the song, if the subject of desire in the song is somebody who's currently in their life or somebody that used to be in their life. But it really just sets the situation, sets the tone in somebody's like bedroom on the floor. I just want to see you sleeping on my floor is the kind of refrain of the song. And I just thought that was so beautiful. And I listen to that song all the time. It's just vocals and guitar. There's no frills, and it really sets the mood. So I'd say that's my favorite tender song that I can think of now.
Well, let's hear it. Thanks so much for coming on the show. The new album is Lavender, Gemma Lawrence. You've
Thanks
been
so much
heard.
for having me.